Are you struggling in a sexually incompatible relationship? Maybe your libidos are mismatched with your partner. You have different sex drives, desires, or you want some sort of different relationship structure. In this video, I'm going to go over what to do when you're sexually incompatible with your partner and basically give you three options. I'm Brandon the Dom. Let's go ahead and dive in. So sexual incompatibility is basically when two partners, or maybe more partners, no judgment there, have differing sexual needs and desires, resulting in both of them suffering from dissatisfaction. And it's honestly one of the largest problems or one of the biggest places of friction inside of relationships, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship with somebody. Maybe you've even been married, had kids, gone through an entire life with this other person. It can sometimes feel like, why is this such a problem? Or why am I even worried about this thing? It's so small compared to everything else in my life. However, you also probably feel a lot of bitterness and resentment and a lot of negative feelings towards your partner, like they're almost the enemy because you're not getting your needs and desires fulfilled. So some ways that this is going to show up in your relationship is you may have mismatched libidos or varying sex drives with your partner. And when this happens, you basically have the person that has the lower sex drive who feels overwhelmed and like you're always coming at them with sex. And that's all that you want. And it can also make them feel like they're not enough as a person or who they are or the ways that they're trying to fulfill your needs. And then on the flip side of that, the higher sex drive person feels a lot of resentment towards their partner because they're the only source of or way to fulfill that need. And they can also feel like they're not desirable. And maybe depending on how sex is viewed, like they're not even loved. And so when this is happening, if sex does occur, it's usually done begrudgingly. It's not that great. Both of you are not having the type of sex life that you want. Another way sexual incompatibility shows up is through differing desires. So for example, one partner may want to have more sensual and intimate sex a lot of the time, and another partner may be more kinky and more like sexually direct. And so the sensual partner may find the kinky sexual partner to be going too fast, getting too into direct things, too overwhelming. And the kinky sexual partner may find the sensual partner more boring or too slow around things. Neither are actually at fault here. Nobody's wrong in their desires. It just happens to be two different ways of experiencing what they want out of their sexual desires. And then the last way that sexual incompatibility often shows up is if you guys want to live two different lifestyles in the way that you're experiencing sex. So one person may be very vanilla and another person may be wanting to explore some of the alternative scenes like BDSM, kink, tantra, maybe want to try out different relationship structures, leaning into the polyamorous realm. And this can be really difficult because they're entirely two different structures, entirely two different ways of living. Now, you may have heard those last three ways that you can be sexually incompatible and think, yes, my partner and I definitely one of those things, but I'm going to give you a list of questions and maybe some signs that you can look out for just to make sure before you're jumping to conclusions. So some things that you can ask yourself and ask your partner is, how frequent would you like to have sexual encounters? So how many times a week, a month would you like to have sex? What would the ideal sexual encounter look like to you? And are you having those? If not, please explain. Who initiates sex? And are you satisfied with this? If not, explain. What desires or things would you like to try with your partner? And what is holding you back from trying them? And explain that as well. Have you ever communicated your turn-ons to your partner? If not, explain. So a lot of times we haven't even expressed what we want from our partners. So they have no idea what our needs are anyways, and they're all trying to guess. I wrote an article and made a video that I'll leave a link down to in the description. Basically 5 ways that you can communicate with your partner. And these are very extensive ways that will give you lots and lots of material to help you understand you and your partner so that your desires are actually being met. Likewise, have you ever communicated your turnoffs with your partner? If not, explain. And the reason I'm saying if not, explain is because I want you to dive into some of the things that are blocking you from having this communication with your partner. And turnoffs or boundaries or limits are very important ones, because if you are doing things that you don't want to do, well, that's not going to make sex very fun and exciting for you. What everyday life stressors may be keeping you from being aroused? There's a ton of stuff going on in our world, and a lot of times we are going through that all day. And by the time we get into the bedroom, we're not feeling very sexy. And then finally, what health issues may be keeping you from being aroused? Sometimes there's some major health stuff going on. Personally, about 5 years ago, I had major gut issues, like microbiome issues. And so that just made my stomach like hurt a lot of the time. I did not feel very sexy during that. It was bloated. I did not want to have sex at all. So little things like that or big things like that can be holding you back from the type of sex that you want. Some other signs that you could be looking out for, and particularly feelings that you or your partner may be having, because feelings and emotions that come up are often signals of what's going on in our life, are you may be feeling bitter, feeling resentful. You could possibly be creating covert contracts. So basically saying, if I do X thing for my partner, they're going to have sex with me. You might be trying to get back at your partner for not having sex with you, not feeling desired. You may feel lonely. You may feel overly needy every time you initiate sex. You may feel overwhelmed by the partner that's always initiating sex if you're on the other end. You might feel like you're not enough. You may feel like something's wrong with you. And you might also be exhibiting the signs of the four horsemen in your relationship outside the bedroom. So the four horsemen are from the research done at the Gottman Institute. So really quickly, contempt, stonewalling, defensiveness, and criticism. So if you're having those sorts of things happen outside of the bedroom, maybe sometimes in the bedroom, is often a sign of maybe sexual incompatibility or sexual issues going on. Now we know what sexual compatibility is. We know some ways to find signs of it happening, questions to ask ourselves. So you've gotten to this point and you say, yes, we're sexually incompatible. What are your options? Well, I'm going to go over 3 of those. And I'm going to go through these in the order that I would approach them. So we're going to start with option 1. If option 1 doesn't work out, maybe we move to option 2. If option 2 doesn't work out, maybe we move to option 3. So option 1 is to stay in the relationship and work it out. If both of you have an interest in wanting to solve this problem, you're willing to work together to find compromise, and you guys still have a very strong connection between you two, then absolutely a solution can be found for this. It's going to require that you learn about each other and communicate with one another and be creative in the way that you're designing your sex lives so you can work with this discrepancy. But the big word here is compromise. Whatever you're doing, you guys are going to have to give a little to each other, meet each other in the middle so that you both are getting your needs met. So some ways that you can start working this out is first to communicate your desires. Asking for your needs and desires to be met is a lot more effective than complaining that they're never being met, especially if you've never actually expressed them. So first, find out what it is that you actually need, what it is that you desire. I've written an article and made a video on 3 tools to help you discover what your turn-ons are. So I recommend watching that. And then afterwards, watch the video of 5 ways to express your needs and desires. And one of the really great tools in there is to create a sex menu. So a sex menu is basically a list of a bunch of sexual acts, and you can write down how much you would want to do it, or maybe if it's a hard limit for you, and write down notes of what that looks like for you. I've created a free one that you can download. It's 350 sexual acts, so pretty good chance that your desire is on there. And you and your partner can each create and fill one of these out. And then you know all the things that your partner is desiring in ways that you may be able to meet each other in the middle. The next way to work things out is to create sensual intimacy. So have a discussion with your partner about what sex actually is to you guys. Start defining it and maybe expanding what that definition may be. And particularly, you're looking for physical and sensual things that could be fulfilling to both of you. And a way you can start doing this is to experiment with non-genital sensual touch, basically all over the body, and doing it in a way that's not leading towards intercourse or not leading towards orgasm. And this is helping you to expand your definition of pleasure and ways you can experience pleasure. Now, this could be simple as kissing, cuddling, giving massages. However, it could also include exploring the world of Tantra, which uses a lot of these elements, but in a lot more intimate ways. And I have a video, an article for that as well, kind of diving into the 3 simple tools within Tantra. So it's really easy to begin. You don't need to be a tantric master at all this stuff. and you'll get a lot of the benefits. So I'll leave a link to that in the description below. The next strategy for working this out is to navigate spontaneous versus responsive desire. So spontaneous desire is basically you can be craving sex and be ready to have sex at any moment. Like very little stimulus is needed for you to be like, yep, I'm ready, let's go. Responsive desire is basically you only really have that desire and arousal once things are already pure and spontaneous. You get a little bit of stimuli, maybe a little sexual imagery, they're getting undressed, something like that, and you're ready to go. Responsive desire is like we actually need to be kind of going through the motions already starting to touch each other, get into foreplay before that desire and arousal starts to kick in. Now, why is this important? Well, a lot of times in the beginning of a relationship, both sides are like so excited about it that they both kind of have spontaneous desire and you're just ready to go at it. You rip each other's clothes off. It happens all the time. However, as relationships go on, a lot of times one or both partners are going to shift to responsive to desire, which means things kind of need to be getting going before they are actually feel aroused and want to have sex. So if one of the partners is responsive desire, they need to kind of be aware of that for themselves and start to go through the motions, like accept the initiation from the one partner so that they can actually start getting aroused. Maybe by the time they're starting to move into having some sort of sex, then they get into it and they're like, okay, yes, I want to have this. And this is where starting with like the sensual intimacy can help in tandem with this to get that responsive desire partner up to speed and wanting to have sex as well. Another strategy for working this out is to basically take the pressure off, especially taking the pressure off the partner that has the lower desire or wants to have sex less frequently. And the reason being is because if you put a ton of pressure on the other partner, it's never going to happen. They're going to feel overwhelmed and like you're always asking for it. So one strategy for this is to actually schedule sex. Now, I know this seems counterintuitive because we just want things to be spontaneous and just happen in the world, but we just learned about spontaneous versus responsive desire. Sometimes this needs to be scheduled in, especially if you have a busy life. And what this basically does is provides the lower sex drive partner room to breathe. They're like, okay, I know it's going to happen on these days. I don't need to be worried about the rest of the days. Where the higher sex drive partner knows that sex is eventually coming, like it's coming later that week. And so they can still look forward to it, be excited about it, and know eventually it's going to happen. To do this, I recommend finding a frequency that is good for both partners. So remember the word compromise that we're trying to do here. If the high sex drive partner wants to have sex a few times a week and the lower sex drive partner only wants to have sex once a month, well, then maybe you're finding somewhere in the middle that's basically like once a week. In addition to this, obviously the higher sex drive partner is like, well, I'm still not entirely fulfilled. And this may be where you're starting to cultivate a steady self-pleasure practice in order to make it between those scheduled times. And the last strategy is actually to work with somebody like a sex and relationship coach, i.e. someone like me, to help give you concrete skills in order to actually communicate with each other, manage your emotions, and collaboratively trying to find a solution. This can be sometimes difficult to do on your own because both sides are charged with those emotions that I was mentioning earlier in the video. And sometimes you're already in that position where it feels like you're against each other, attacking each other. And the other person is, trying to hold you back from sex. The one person wants more sex. So having that objective third party to help you work through this, start communicating, cool everything down can be really helpful. If that's something you're interested in, I have a link down below to schedule a free time and would love to work with both of you. I do one-on-one and one-on-two coaching. All right, let's talk about option 2. If option 1 was not working, and that's to fulfill your needs outside of the relationship. This can be particularly great if you've already built a life with your partner and everything's great except for this one thing. Then this is an option that can allow you guys to keep that great life and also get the needs fulfilled that are not being fulfilled within that partnership. Now, personally, I'm going to express my bias here. I find it kind of crazy that we put all of our needs, all of our desires, and try and make that one person play every single role in our life, because it just seems like a very tall order that's hard for any one person to fulfill. So opening up your relationship or exploring alternative relationship structures can be a way that you can still keep that relationship and, find ways to have your needs fulfilled. To do this honestly and ethically and not be cheating on your partner, both of you need to have conversations about what your needs, emotions, boundaries are around this and what the structure may look like to you. Some ways that you may structure it, and this is not an exhaustive list at all, but you could try polyamory, where you basically have multiple romantic relationships. You could try polyamory with a hierarchy. So there's a main partner who's often called an anchor partner. And then there's other partners that you have, but you're always making sure that your priority is that first anchor partner. You could try a throuple or a triad. So all three people are basically in romantic or sexual relationships with the other people in the throuple. You could also do a closed V. So this is three people again, but there's a hinge person that has a relationship with two people, but these two people do not have relationships together. You could be monogamish. So this is basically still being monogamous, but there's certain occasions that it's okay that you are having a sexual relationship with another person. So that may be something like a hall pass. They go on a trip somewhere and they're allowed to be with whoever, or certain things like that. Another thing you could try is swinging. So this is usually couples that meet other couples who want to swap partners or have sex with other people within that known community. And then, of course, there's the realm of BDSM and DS non-monogamous relationships. And oftentimes these relationships happen because one partner is more vanilla and another partner is kinky, or they don't share the same type of kinks and desires. So they need to look outside the relationship to get those kinks fulfilled. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is not an exhaustive list at all. And really, it doesn't matter how you structure the relationship or what you call it. All that matters is that you two have agreed to it and it's what you want. And you can set up the restructure and rules for that however you like. Now, that kind of means you have the entire world of possibilities in front of you, which can be hard to decide. It's like standing in an aisle at the grocery store and you're like, there's 50 types of bread. Which kind of bread do I want? So again, if this is something you'd like to work through, I can help you do that as well and coach both of you through it, help you kind of figure out what your boundaries are, what your emotions are with it, and then develop a structure for you guys that works for you. All right. So now if you're not able to work it out just in the relationship between you two, and you're not able to look outside of the relationship, or one partner just doesn't want to have outside people within the relationship, then you have to start looking at option 3, which is you end the relationship. Now, I know society puts a lot of stigma on top of ending relationships, especially if it's a divorce, and they would probably put even more stigma on top of it if they know that it's strictly because, you have sexual incompatibility. However, I'm going to tell you it's not wrong, and you shouldn't be shamed for that. You have needs and desires as a human, and those needs and desires, when they're going unfulfilled, eat at you. That is not a very good life to live. So if that's the case and you can't get it met through option 1 and you can't get it met through option 2, well, then what's left is option 3, and that's okay. So some signs that option 3 is your best option and that you should probably be leaving the relationship is 1, there's a lack of willingness from you or a lack of willingness from your partner to actually work through this. It takes 2 to tango. It's the only way that you guys are going to come up with a solution. So if one of you is not willing to compromise, one of you is not willing to even find a solution, well, then you're going to have to end the relationship. Kind of related to this, if you have too much resentment or heartache around this. So a lot of times this is a problem that kind of gets shoved under the rug and it goes on for years and years and years. And that resentment has built up the entire time. And by the time that you are at the boiling point that you actually want to address it, where there's been so much hurt and sorrow around it, you guys are already butting heads. You see each other as enemies, and it feels like you're never going to come to a solution. And sometimes that can be just too much to bear. It's too much to work through at your point in your life. And maybe you've been going through option 1 of trying to work with each other, and it just feels like you're at wit's end with negotiating or talking with them about it. Like it feels like it's never going anywhere. This may be a sign that, it's better to end the relationship. And then the last sign that I would mention is if you guys have incompatible lifestyles. Because when you guys have incompatible lifestyles, either, wanting to try alternative sex and alternative lifestyles or wanting to have different types of relationship dynamic, this is going to cause a lot of tension because basically you want to go two different directions in life. Like you want to be spending your time in different ways. And so it literally means like you guys are pulling apart. You're going different directions. And that's not good for a relationship. Like when you're in a relationship, you want to be aimed at the same thing. You're headed both the same way. So in that case, I definitely recommend ending the relationship because it's just going to be opposite directions, tension the entire time instead of working together in a relationship. Now, just because the relationship is ending does not mean it needs to be an all out brawl and you hate the other person and everything that happened in your relationship was terrible. And like none of the good memories matter. That is not how relationships need to end. In fact, you can be friends when you're done. You can still care for each other, be there for each other in certain capacities, and still have a deep appreciation for the beautiful life that you built together. All those memories, like they're all still a part of you. They make up who you are now. So it's okay to still cherish that. I know that can be hard, especially if you've gone many years with this problem. However, I highly, highly suggest that you try and find a way to still see that other person, somebody that you love, that you probably still care for. And just this thing is not making the relationship compatible anymore. Personally, this is something that I went through with my ex-wife. And in fact, we're still really good friends. I talk with her every once in a while. We have phone calls, visit her once in a blue moon as I've been traveling. And we deeply respect and still admire the relationship that we had. But we were one of those couples that just wanted to go two different ways in lifestyle. Obviously, being on this channel that you are now, you can see where I was wanting to head. And that caused a lot of friction in the relationship. And when I was in the relationship, I didn't entirely know this. And so we were having a discrepancy really in sex drives, but I was also wanting to explore different needs and interests. And at the time, I didn't have the confidence to express what my desires were. It wasn't until I got out of the relationship and started growing a lot more in my confidence and as a person that I was able to reflect back on that and say, oh, okay, this was one of those situations where they wanted to go in two different ways. But that does not make the 8 years that I spent with her null and void. I still care about her and want the best for her. But now we're both, very happy and satisfied in what we're doing. So just keep that in mind if you actually get to option 3. It doesn't need to be terrible. It can actually be a really great thing for the both of you and make both of your lives better. Ultimately, though, whatever option you're going through, and as you go through that entire process, communication is the bread and butter of this. Communication is the bread and butter of relationships, and you need to be talking with your partner through this. If you would like help with this, as I said before, I offer one-on-one and one-on-two coaching. I'd love to talk with both of you, and I honestly hold no judgment about which option that you want. The only thing I want for you guys is for both of you to reach your goals and, have the sex life that you want. And if that's through option 1, fantastic. I'll help you get there. If it's option 2, fantastic. I'll help you through that as well. And if it's option 3, that's okay too. And you're not going to get any judgment from me. Just want to help you guys in whatever ways that you want your sex and relationships to be. So there's a link for that down in the description. I would love to chat with you. As always, thank you so much for your time and attention.